Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Wednesday, June 22nd. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Guilderland Central School District DEI meeting. If we can start by joining me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Our first agenda item is to approve the minutes from the May 11th meeting. Did anybody get a chance to read those minutes? Can I have a motion to approve? I'll take that from you, Mirzad. A second? Thank you, Seema. All right, any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from May 11th? Thank you very much, everyone. All right, on to our very exciting agenda items for this evening. Number one is to welcome our new committee members. So the DEI Committee tonight, as you see on our screen, would like to welcome the following new committee members. As a staff member, Julianne Scanlon. Parents, and I'm going to apologize in advance if I butcher some names here, Carly Young, Nina Kaplan, Tyann Thomas, Kylie Killens, Savannah, and then as students, I'm sorry, Kylie Killens, Savannah Jiang, and then two community members, Mary Schmitz and Gwen Pope. An orientation with the steering committee will be held for these new members at a time that is mutually convenient. And we can expect for that to occur, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, over the summer, prior to us getting started in the fall. Would anybody like to comment on our new members and join an additional welcome to our new members?
Definitely, I'll just hop in real quick and say welcome, and we are so happy and excited to meet all of you, to work with you, and to continue the great foundation that's already been built in support of our kids and families.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Matt. Moving on, welcome everyone. Moving on to number two, this is a standing agenda item that you'll see in every meeting, a report from our subcommittees. If we could start with communications, we'll get a report from that committee first.
I don't see Maxine on the call, but I'll jump in here to say that we ended up not being able to meet. However, work has been done sort of outside of our meetings, and the district launched our new DEI website about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. I encourage everyone to take a look. It's beautiful. It has lots of new information. It's loaded with photos. It captures some of the work that we've been doing. And it's really the kind of the first step. It will get some more content over the summer months. So by the time we meet again in September, it will even have more content. So I'll just thank our communications specialist, Patrice Viverito, who's done the work kind of behind the scenes to pull all that together. And thanks, Mike, for posting it there. It's really worth a look. It's just beautiful.
Thank you so much. Any questions on the communication committee? Great work on the website. All right, next up is our community engagement committee.
Good evening. I'm back again. So I just wanted to share out from the last meeting, we spoke about a few different things. One, just an update on our PTA membership. So granted that there are going to be some changing of PTA leadership, and that membership is going to look a little bit different. We do still have folks right now in 5 of the 7 buildings. So that's something that we're excited about. And we're hoping that, especially with new membership, and as we end up looking at what subcommittees folks are able to be on, that we're going to be able to have someone in each one of our 7 buildings to be able to just be a liaison with PTAs, go and just be a presence, because community engagement, that really is our charge. The other things that we discussed were centered around just even further ways that we might be able to support students in future efforts and things like rally that happened, which I'll circle back to later on in the DEI in action part. And then also we have a letter drafted, a letter to the editor, really just addressing the violence that we've seen happening in schools, and looking to just challenge that, because it's something that really across the board we all see it as something that is not a situation that we want to just passively sit by through. So so those are things that were in the works as we kind of wrapped up things for the school year.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions for the engagement committee? Elizabeth?
I have a question. Or Matt, do we want to talk about was this in the research committee, or our what do you call it? Our survey.
That was research.
Oh yeah, never mind. Sorry.
Well, Elizabeth, what a great segue. So the next committee is the research committee, a report from there.
Elizabeth, you want to take over, or I can?
No, I don't want to. You can.
Okay. Yeah. So the research committee has worked through the survey of teaching social studies, utilizing the resources of district provides and addressing social issues with Matt. We finished this survey. What questions? 1 month, I think, like later May. I guess the plan is to send out early June, but by Matt, because that's kind of more formal from Matt through the Google Forms. But Matt wanted to get a final touch on that. So Matt, what is your schedule on this one?
Yeah, so I can hop in there. Thank you, Louis. So with the way that the school year ended up winding down, and just kind of the pressures both anticipated and things that ended up just popping up, specific to history, one of the things like the change that happened with the U.S. Regents and things of that nature. This is something that's going to be, I think, better situated to be able to do going into next year, and it'll also align actually a bit with some of the audit work that's going to end up happening with progression partners. So the timeline is going to make a little bit more sense to do this survey that ended up that the research committee put together, and kind of share that out with social studies teachers, with the goal being not so much just about gathering information, but ways to support teachers in what they're doing, and to try to take some of that load off, and whether that is providing resources or trying to streamline things and just help make things more accessible for folks who want to do things. And this is really, we're trying to address social issues and issues surrounding DEI kind of across the board. So that's really the purpose of the survey. I just wanted to make that part clear.
Thanks, Matt. You can take questions from the group. I see Seema and Elizabeth have hands up.
Hey, Matt, do you mind reminding us what the purpose for that? I don't remember.
Yes.
Thanks.
So the purpose of the survey, the research committee, one of the things that they've been working on kind of throughout the year was looking at the social studies standards and seeing ways where DEI can be kind of imbued throughout the curriculum. And this was over, I'd say, the past 2 months, really the genesis of the survey. It was to see, okay, what are ways that teachers are already engaging in this work? And then seeing other ways that teachers might want to, like, do they feel like they have enough things already at their fingertips to be able to do if that's what they want to do? And what other things might teachers want and or need to be able to engage in that and feel confident and comfortable in what they're doing? So that's the purpose of the survey, is really kind of gathering that information. And we'll touch on this later on, but just given the work that's happening surrounding the audit with the district, I thought it made sense to try to pair those two things rather than do something right at the end of the year when everyone's focusing on final grades and there's regents and prep and all those other things, to then be able to, okay, like have it just make more sense for teachers and staff.
Yeah, like questions that we have on there are things like, have you ever, brought in some kind of additional material that you thought was really successful in terms of teaching about diverse stories that might not be normally included, so and what did you do? Like, tell us a success story that you have created, because that might give us ideas and that we could share. And then another one was like, where is an area that you might lack confidence to really talk about somebody else's experience that isn't your own? And I think another one was more broadly, like, is there anything that you feel that you need, could benefit from additional sort of, whether it would be, like professional development or a workshop or like one-on-one talking with somebody like Matt, so it was kind of like going at different angles, trying to find out the situation and what we could possibly do to help.
Got it. Thank you.
I'd like to just ask a question of Matt. Is this geared mostly towards the high school age group, middle school age group? Was the elementary school teachers included, or social studies cabinet?
Yeah, so this was, it's something that is about going K-12, and I'm glad that you brought up cabinet, because that's one of the venues that I think would be really effective to be able to share this with cabinets, because there already is a social studies cabinet, and be able to just share this, so then that can be disseminated district-wide.
But the survey, did that include all the grade levels of teachers?
Yeah, so it's designed to be a K-12 survey, yes,
Okay. Thank you.
absolutely.
All right, thank you both. And anything else for research committee? Last committee is the audit committee. We did not meet, but you will see attached to the agenda tonight is a scope of service. Matt, I'll give you a minute or two to just run down where we are with the audit.
Okay, so I will try my best to be kind of brief with this and just give an overview of things that have happened. So on the district-wide level, we have met with our outside partner, Progression Partners is their name, and we have the scope of service, which more or less outlines the way that the year is going to be structured. And so we do have some dates for how things are going to look. We have the way that things are going to look, and it's going to start over the summer with the leadership team all engaging and stuff. And then there'll be building level specific work that ends up happening with equity teams throughout the buildings that will engage in things like an equity walk that will a couple times, 6 times throughout the year meet and ultimately go with the purpose of trying to create an equity plan for that building. Well, we also, we know that particularly with DEI, it's not something that we can one size fits all. So that's why we have building level stuff. But when we culminate by March 6th, the idea is to then take these building level things and also with support and guidance of, the audit committee here, pan out what that district vision is going to look like. So what are ways that, while Altamont and Westmere and Linwood, might have different needs, how do we kind of steer these things so that by the time a student becomes an FMS student, they're going to be able to have, similar exposures, and so that, we're not all coming in at different levels. So that's one of the things that's going to be really important. And so the teams are going to be made, informed with the support really of the building leadership. And then there's also an opportunity for things like focus groups where we want to engage students, parents, the community. And something that's really important with this is to get a good cross-section of the community, at least as much as we can, while also still keeping the numbers small. And I think that's probably, if I'm anticipating one thing that might be a challenge, I do want to be upfront with that part that some of these, it might be literally 5 people on the equity team. So it's going to be very hard to just get everyone who wants to be a part of this work in that specifically. But what I can also definitely say is that, especially as we have our equity plans formed and with things like focus groups, this is not work that the equity team alone is going to be able to do. This is something that's going to really, be something that will need everyone's help and support for this to be successful. So that's kind of where we're at. And I know that's a snapshot, and I'm not going to too much detail because I don't want to end up getting bogged down too long there. But the scope of service is included in our agenda for today. Elizabeth.
a question. So, this is the scope of service, this is referring to the audit, the equity audit, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So, is this going to include sort of like hardcore number crunching? Like, for instance, like how many kids, for instance, in elementary school are sent to the principal's office, and what is the ethnic and all, you know, et cetera, special needs makeup of the kids that are being disciplined? Is somebody going to look at that, and also like which kids are being selected for different honors, including like honors courses and stuff like that, which kids are not? So it just sort of an audit of where does Guilderland stand in terms of those types of areas.
So it's gonna have both qualitative data and the quantitative data that you're referring to. I'll share an excerpt from one of the segments. So just because I talked about it earlier, this is what Progression Partners has in their thing. So for equity learning walks, if anyone wants to follow along, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down in the middle of the line. It says the purpose of the walk is to look at the school environment, so cross-cultural engagement, racial justice, inclusivity. That's more where we'll see kind of the qualitative piece. And then examine data, the quantitative piece. So that's achievement, suspensions, referral, AP class student selection, et cetera, and visit classrooms. So it's going to be both that are engaged, that or both that tap pools are going to be tapped in this. And I don't see how it would be possible to do an audit without both things. As much as we need the quantitative, the qualitative is the experiences of folks going through it. So I think that's going to, like, in my mind, minimally have equal weight, but it's definitely going to be both things that are taken into account with this.
Yeah, I think it's important not just to have only like subjective, you know, I feel like this when someone says something to me, but also like, here's where we actually are. Like, people might be surprised if they, you know, it's possible that the results of that quantitative data could be worse than people suspect. And so I think, you know, it's harder to argue with that sort of data. So I think it's important that we have it and we know where we stand in that regard. So I think it's really important piece of it.
Just a question for you, Matt.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know, I'm not sure how to phrase this, but when we're looking at all that data and something like, you know, how many students sent to the principal's office and a breakdown of race or, you know, ethnicity, things like that, how are we going to include things like poverty? Like students who come from poverty?
So this is one of those areas where I'm trying to make sure I answer this.
I guess what I'm asking is, will we be able to do that?
Matt, I can jump in here
Okay,
and
I
say,
don't want to.
and I can say, we can say absolutely yes. We have to gather a wide range of data on the various subgroups of our population that
Yes.
include, so we look at male, female, socioeconomically stressed, students with disabilities, English language learners. We'll look at race. So it will look at all of the subgroups of the students that we serve.
Okay.
And then the data across those. So what does that mean for discipline, attendance,
Yes.
achievement, participation in honors, and, you know, any other variable you can think about? But the key here is we do want to look at all of our subpopulations.
Right. I agree with you, Marie. I think that is so important that we do that. And I realize there are a lot of subgroups that will have to be studied, but I think it's really important that we include all across the board. Thank you.
And one other thing I'll say too with this, and this is, I think, equally important to finding areas of growth for us. There are definitely going to be areas where we're going to see that the district is doing a good job in things. And I think it's really important for us to find those spots as well, so we can see, okay, what are the successes that we're having, and how do we replicate that in other spaces, and how do we like learn, okay, what's making this effective? Why are we seeing the success here? So it's definitely twofold, not just about trying to see, you know, areas of growth for us. So were there any other questions about that? And this is something where we're going to see kind of the progression of this throughout the year. So you can see the list of dates on the 9th page of the agenda, where we have things kind of laid out and how it's going to look. So again, that those module 1s and 2, like one is it's starting with the leadership team and making sure that everyone's on the same page, that when as the teams are formed and as that work really progresses, that we're able to have kind of a cohesive vision and make sure that we have a shared understanding of things. Okay. So if we're good there, then I'll go to the third item on our agenda, which is DEI in action, which is one of our standing agenda items now, and just really one of my personal favorites. And so I'll start kind of with a recap of the anti-hate rally. I'm not sure how many folks were able to attend, but if you were able to attend, I would wager that experience was similar to mine, where I felt moved. It was powerful seeing the students really take that leadership role and put on something that they had been working towards and for all year long. The stories were incredibly powerful, and even just the number of community folks who came. So thank you to everyone from this body who did end up going. I know it meant a lot to our students. It meant a lot to me on a personal level. Thanks to members of the community who ended up coming out. We did end up having a really, really good turnout. And we were also able to have some FMS students there. And that was, I think, powerful, not just for the FMS students, but I think also for other attendees too, to be able to see that this is not something that exists as a monolith at the high school level. This is something that exists at other levels. And the stories that we've heard high schoolers share, they begin in that FMS time and even earlier, because there was a moment where some FMS students spoke and they shared their experiences and their stories. And that part was extremely powerful. So that was definitely something where I thought that it was a really just powerful moment. I can't even put into words articulately enough to describe how I felt leaving it. And I'm just grateful for the students who spent, and they might not say it to everyone, but they spent hours and hours and hours, like late night after late night. Even the week of the rally, there were kids who were staying 4, 5, 6 hours after school, just trying to make sure that things were done. So this was definitely a monumental effort. And I think that the charge for this committee, and for also folks who are watching this as well, it's that we need to listen to their voices and make sure that the stories that they shared and the experiences that we had don't just become something from the past, that we take those words and we view them as living and we make them something that's transformative in our everyday action. I think the bare minimum that we can do is to honor our students and honor what we heard, and we have to really make that something that we live by. Kind of bridging that, as we've gotten into Pride Month, something else that has really been a joy of mine is engaging in different things surrounding across the district. So this is not something that's really relegated to just one building. One of the highlights, though, that I can share, just because of how active the group is as a whole, is with FMS Alliance. And Mike, if you want to share kind of what that experience was like, you saw more of it than I did, but that was something that really that the club has just been fantastic and done some great work. Or Chris as well, if either one of you want to share about that.
Thanks, Matt. Chris, jump in. We had a great week celebrating some Pride initiatives. Our counselors and social workers put together some nice activities for some kids. We had huge participation. I just dropped in the link for the week that we celebrated different unique talents and unique strengths. And I want to thank our social workers and our counselors for putting together a great week. And our students participated. It was lots of kids participating, which was great. Chris, jump in.
Sure. We just spotlighted a lot of different causes. So being more inclusive and intersectional against the colors of the rainbow. So like one day was red and orange and what causes are represented by that. Another day was yellow. So kids picked up ribbons and it kind of took on a weird viral take where kids wanted to collect all the ribbons. But then part of it was discussing like, why are you wearing a green ribbon? Oh, I wear a green ribbon because I have a family member with mental health issues. I wear a blue ribbon because I've experienced bullying. So having those conversations with students, and I still have staff and students through the building wearing their ribbons because they were really excited to collect them. And then just bringing more attention to the diverse student body that we have and the strong LGBT community that we have in our middle school, which is really exciting. I just want to shout out to that, reflecting back on the anti-hate rally with the LGBTQ group at the middle school, they were so thrilled to participate in that and like really excited to see that where they're going, there will be continued inclusion for their particular community. So thank you for that, Matt.
It was wonderful to see the FMS students leap up there and speak so excitedly, kind of impromptu. So it was great. And I mean, the whole rally was like this just cause for hope in a time that's been pretty dark. The last couple of months have been pretty dark in this country in a lot of ways. But yeah, so it was definitely a sign of hope and, looking forward to these kids doing great things.
Yeah, so
I was just gonna say, I went to the rally, was awesome. The students were so great. And just because you happened to bring up FMS's, all of their pride celebration, I was really proud. It just reminded me, and it contrasted with something came across my email today from a library on Long Island, I guess, that made a resolution to display all pride flags in the children's section of the library. So, and then talking about this, I'm just really proud that our district is talking about this and celebrating it. It's just kind of, 180 for me as we're talking about this. So thanks.
that's the best kind of 180. And honestly, and so like FMS was really a group spotlight, but things were happening across every building. Like I would walk down the halls in different buildings and see posters and different things put up. And I think one of my favorite things is the way that the discourse is being shaped now. It's really about love and the power of inclusivity, and that it's really just it's just a great thing. So definitely super excited about that. And then the last thing I wanted to share with everyone, Dr. Ross touched on it a little bit earlier, but that website is updated. It looks great. The link is out there for anyone watching at home. If you just go on to the website, and then on the right side, towards the top, you can just click on the section for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're looking forward to sustaining that and adding new things, especially as we progress over the course of this year, and maybe even some edits over summer as we can from some of the things that we're describing right now. Yeah, Chris.
It's not on the list, but I was really excited to see so many of the people in this group, including the students at the March for Our Lives. I think that speaks to the importance of equity within our culture, the need to be able to come to school and feel safe for all students. I feel very safe in Guilderland, but I know there are schools in our region that don't feel as safe when you walk in, and it would be nice if everyone could have that experience of feeling like the people in their building are taking care of their needs.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to echo that was a powerful moment on people. Yeah, Elizabeth?
I just wanted to also say that I read in, there's an editorial this past week in the Altamont Enterprise about New York State creating the first, I think it was this week, creating the first Pride PTSA. Yeah, I'll just put it in the chat right here. So first state in the country to create a special Pride PTSA. So Parent Teacher Student Association regarding issues around sexual identity, gender identity, all that sort of thing. I thought that was really cool. And our Kim Blasiak was instrumental in helping to create that. So.
Dr. Wiles, and then Nina.
I just want to circle back to the March for Our Lives and those students and recognize our Board of Education who passed a resolution at the last board meeting that will result in the district playing an active role in providing information to our families about the safe storage of guns. I think we're the first school district in the area, maybe the state. I haven't heard of anyone else around the state doing this, and it speaks to the power of student voices and adults who listen. So I'm super proud of that work.
Nina?
Well, first, that's wonderful. Really is. My question is regarding the audit connecting to the DEI in action, and I'm wondering if there's proposals from the audit that, like, once that data is collected, um, that does part of the audit also make proposals for what districts can do, or what the district can do to address any deficits that it might discover. Um, and I'm also wondering if, on the topic of sexuality, if that's one of the categories that the demographics include.
I can jump in the first part, well, actually both parts, and anyone who wants to help can do the second part. So the audit, the whole purpose of the audit is to do exactly that, Nina, which is to help us figure out where we are so we know what we need to work on and can create an action plan to move forward. We don't currently collect data on like sexual orientation or sexual identity in any formal way. We know it informally when students come forward, for example, and wish to share their pronouns with us. So that's a great question that we probably need to dig into a little bit. That won't happen just by running a report out of the data, the report to the state. But that's a great question to think about.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me just clarify my question. So, for example, I know that as a teacher, I've seen a lot of when we talk about the audit looking at students who've been suspended, for example, or there's been some kind of punitive repercussion for actions. This year, several times, like for example, there was a student in front of me in the hallway, and another student had come and kicked this first student in the knee, right? And it seemed to be an attack on who this person was identifying as. And this particular student had been the subject of another attack the week prior. So I guess what I'm saying is, so if the child who's doing whatever the bullying is, right? And if we're looking at, okay, so are we looking at any type of, I'm trying to say this, like, are we able to decipher where the discipline is coming from? Like, yes, we want to look at the demographics of who's being disciplined, but is there also a category for the type of bullying or the type of repercussion? Like, this child's being disciplined for bullying reasons for this situation, or this child is just being targeted because of their demographic unfairly. Like, is there any way that that audit can decipher the type of discipline that's being taken?
I think as you were speaking, I think the way to do that is through DASA. We keep track of DASA complaints and DASA related incidents, and that's a great point because we certainly have that data. And we do report that to the state as well. So we do have that.
So would that be an overlap in terms of once we gather the information from the data of who's being disciplined, with an overlap of the DASA to kind of go through some of that? Or is that not even a possible way to categorize things?
I think it's very possible and very important to do. So that's a great point.
I also think, kind of as an aside, we may see some of those kinds of stories and incidents popping up, and some things with like focus groups where maybe there's not necessarily a DAS complaint out there, but we'll learn more about these things through stories and through what folks share. Not that anyone's forced to, but that may also be a forum or something that happens.
Another area that we don't officially track is religion, right? Marie, we had talked about that at one point in an earlier meeting about the idea that there might be a benefit to asking students about their religion again, so that we would know where we stand and what kind of diversity we do have in our district. I think it came up in the discussion of Muslim students asking for one holiday in the year to be a school holiday. So we were wondering, how many students are there? I don't know if we knew.
We don't in any formalized way. So I think we'd have to do some homework about how and if and when and how, we could even gather that data. That's a great point, Elizabeth.
Does anyone else have anything they wanted to comment on, their thoughts about any other DEI and action items? Okay.
Are you ready, Matt? Okay. All right. So thanks everybody for the feedback. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is committee structure. We have a couple of agenda items tonight, both committee structure and learning component. But really the purpose of these agenda items is to help plan for next year and do a little bit of reflection on how things are working within our committee structure and get some feedback on whether we want to keep things the same, remain the same, or make some adjustments to the committee. So the structure of the committee right now, we want to look at two different pieces, both the subcommittee structure and also the steering committee. So why don't we start with talking about the subcommittees and gathering some feedback. So we'd like to debrief the subcommittee structure, consider if any changes should be made to the structure, purpose, and goals of each of the subcommittees. So this would be a good time to gather some feedback if you have feedback on either your personal committee or any of the other 4 committees that we have. Seema?
I guess the one thing that I did like is to have the share out from all the subcommittees, because I don't remember who is on every committee and what the project is, or what they're working on. I think the website was updated this year, so we have who's on those subcommittees. I don't know if we ever formalize this, but like, if somebody wants to participate in a way or help with these efforts, and obviously they're not in the committee, but I think we kind of talked informally about they could work or help a subcommittee. And so let's say somebody, approached me and they wanted to help with something, I'm assuming, or I don't know how everybody else did it, but I would maybe approach a person on the subcommittee that I think would be the right person do you know what I mean? Like, steer them to the right subcommittee. And I guess I like that because it doesn't close doors of who wants to help and participate, but it kind of keeps this main group manageable, because if it's too big, it's really difficult to do anything.
I agree, Seema. I think it's really helpful, to give the report outs. So it helps the different subcommittees know what the right and left hands are doing so that we can be working in concert with each other, but also the subcommittees are a way to include more people in the work without it becoming overwhelming. So good feedback. Other thoughts on the subcommittees and their structure? Matt?
I just wanted to comment to that second part and just say that I am 100% with you in terms of subcommittee membership, that we want to bring in as many folks as we can, as many as are interested. And given that we have a number of different ways that people can participate, I think that that's huge. Kind of just going to put a plug in for community engagement. There are still some areas where we would love to be able to have some folks be a PTA representative and be able to just share information. Even it's not like it's some big formal thing, but it's just important because representation matters. But yeah, there are a number of folks who reached out to me just throughout the course of the year and wanted to be on, and they joined and really were impactful and had a big role in shaping the subcommittees that they were on. So I think that that's huge.
So I'll pipe in with a question about the audit committee, just to get some feedback from the larger committee. We've made a lot of progress in the last year and a half with the audit committee and are now in a really different place than we were when the committee was formed. Initially, some of the thoughts were that the audit committee would be doing quite a bit of the work, but now we've decided that that's not feasible and are moving in a different direction. And so I'm wondering, both from members of the audit committee, but also just members of the whole committee, would it make sense to make some adjustments as far as the purpose of the audit committee, or maybe to make some combinations or move in a different direction with that committee? Mike?
Can you pause while the work is being done?
Oh, sorry, you're muted, Amy.
Muted.
Yeah, No, I think that's possible. I think the reason I asked the question is because I want to make sure that our time is well spent and that we're not meeting just for the sake of meeting, right? But I also want to make sure we're giving opportunities for members of the larger committee to contribute.
Well,
And in a way that's meaningful and purposeful.
I'm just wondering, as we begin our relationship with Progression Partners and they begin the audit work, the granular audit work, could you take a pause? And then if necessary, the band could get back together when it's done? I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible. Elizabeth?
I have a question. The description that I read in the agenda didn't. It seemed. I was just curious what is going to be the role of the committee, if any, in the audit. Doesn't seem like there's much of a role. So will we find out what's happening? You know what I mean? Will we be involved at all, or just maybe hear about it each time we have a meeting, or how will it work?
Seema?
That's kind of what Elizabeth was alluding to. I'm in agreement with Mike that maybe we can pause, but get like a regular update from the from Progression Partners, because we know other people on. I don't. Not everybody that's on this committee or our subcommittee were district, so we wouldn't have a regular discourse that's happening. I don't know if Dr. Wiles is something, or you or Matt would be able to kind of give the audit committee and a little update on. I'm not sure how to set that. Maybe Elizabeth. Not anything is probably not a good idea.
I'm happy to jump in there. I think I would propose that we think about including on our monthly agenda our standing item that says update from the work around the equity audit, because it has many components to it. There's a training component, there's a planning component, there's a focus group component, there's, walkthrough components. So I think between now and really April of 2023, we're going to have a lot of things happening, so that this larger group, I think, certainly needs to be fully apprised of the kind of work that's happening. And I would guess that there are people on this screen who would be part of focus groups and or maybe some of the walkthroughs and or some of the planning teams, depending on your availability and all of those kinds of things, because it is a big time commitment. There's just a lot of things connected to it. So I do think it would be essential for this larger DEI committee to know, kind of step by step what the work is, how it's progressing, what's being worked on, and so on. I don't know, Matt, do you want to jump in? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes a lot of sense. One, because a role that's going to happen with this committee, I think almost by default, is being involved in some of those singular step kinds of things. I also think that one thing that's going to be really, really important is, especially when we have the equity plans on the building level and after that March 6th date, I think this committee is going to be paramount to supporting that work happening in each of the buildings, and then also, and what's that going to look like for our district-wide agenda. I'm in favor of a standing item. I think that makes sense. In some months, it may be a longer report than others, but I think that it makes sense. We have the schedule. We know kind of the timetable that we're looking at here. So I know, just off the top of my head, like I know March is going to be a busier one because there's going to be a lot of things happening. So we'll go through and we'll kind of take it day by day. November is going to be a busy one. So we can definitely add that. Is that something that everyone is interested in? I saw a couple heads nodding, and it's
Sounds like some head nodding for the standing agenda item. So if we can, Dr. Wiles, as Deb Sim is making the agendas, we can keep that just like some of our other
Sure.
standing items. 'We'll add that. We'll have lots of standing items.
Sure.
All right. Well, I think we're right, any other feedback, Mary?
Just a question is, those of us who are new to the committee, and this is our first meeting, as far as being involved in the different committees, how does that happen? How are members assigned to committees?
That's a really good question, and I think something that will be discussed at the orientation over the summer. There's 4 different committees, like you heard about tonight, and so we'll take a look together at the orientation about sizes of the different committees and based on what your interest levels are and assigning people. So yes, everyone would be assigned to a particular committee. Good question for the newbie, Mary. Other something it's really good, something that we didn't clarify. Other thoughts and questions on the subcommittee format, or things that you think maybe should be adjusted moving forward?
Were we going to have a student voice subcommittee or something?
Matt, do you want to go with that?
Yeah, that's something that we have talked about. We've explored the possibility of it. I am perhaps obviously in favor of that being something that happens, largely because of something that was shared at last meeting or the meeting beforehand, where sometimes the space might be intimidating for students to feel like they can say, the things that they're thinking or feeling, and just additional pressures that come from it. I think what it comes down to is, would students also be involved in some of the other subcommittees? Because going to each of them, I can say that students do a whole lot with those subcommittees. I think some of the best conversation, for example, in the engagement one is driven by Nora Squared. Maxine has a huge role in the communications group. So I think there's just, the students do a lot in those ones. So I see benefits either way. Nina?
Is there a committee that would be involved in guest speakers or people like that for the either professional development or for the community, to bring people in as an added resource?
So yeah, and I mean, I can share it real quick, just what the different subcommittees are right now, and then we can kind of go to the idea of student voice and see if that's the direction that we want to move in. But the different committees that we have, so there is a research subcommittee, and if I try to summarize the charges, it's hard because each group, they do a lot of different things, but basically research, they will go into gathering data is the primary thing, but also with the survey, it's about not just gathering data, but seeing, okay, what are ways that we might do this? So research really does work that benefits every single one of the subcommittees and the larger one. An example, when we were looking at things, even with EAT, so the research committee also brought back information and then shared that out with the group. There's communications, which they really focus on, okay, how do we make sure that we're effectively communicating with the community, what's happening, how do we make sure, so that's where like stuff like the website comes in. Also, how do we promote DEI things that are happening, and just things along that vein. Then there's community engagement, which is how do we bring others in the surrounding area into the work, and how do we make sure that there are opportunities for people to engage in the work and things of that interest. That's where we kind of see that PTA connection happening. And then there's audit, which is the one that Amy had brought up just a little bit ago, where we are, looking to have that kind of on pause as this is happening, so that we can just maximize people's time instead of having people meet for just the purpose of meeting. Then that's why we'll have the audit reports kind of being shared out here. So those are the ones that have happened. And one of the big things that we did talk about throughout the course of the year, and have tossed back and forth, is the idea of having a student voice subcommittee where it's solely focused on student voice. So if that's the direction that we want to go in, I'm definitely in favor of it. And this is it, like, it's not as it wouldn't be like a new topic. One of the benefits that we've talked about with it is that can be a great way to reach out, particularly to younger students, and be able to give them a platform, and to do kind of some leadership training, where some of the students who are older, graduating seniors, juniors, so on and so forth, that have been on the committee for a while, can then kind of share the tricks of the trade and things that they've learned along their way with younger students. So that's kind of the idea behind it. Yeah, Chris.
I'm just spitballing maybe an option since we have students on here, and that would be another time commitment. To have, you know, we've talked about having a no place for hate or diversity club at the middle school, and then having somebody be a liaison to this committee, so they bring that student voice, whether it's Kylie because she's a middle school student, or somebody else to speak what's discussed in that meeting, so that it doesn't become another 6, 7, 8 o'clock p.m. time commitment for a student. But it's like an activity period thing that meets a couple times a month, and it has that opportunity to reach a larger, I think in the middle school, like much larger population of kids who want to be engaged, who would do great with leadership opportunities if you wanted to do trainings, if you wanted to have speakers and all those sorts of things that we do with clubs, but then also communicates what's, you know, if we do surveys, if we, you know, try to reach out to the greater student body, that would be an easier, maybe a different way to approach that.
I think this feedback is really helpful. Nina?
So I'm a club advisor for a group called iCare in South Colony, and we do a lot of leadership training for kids. It's basically for kids who may not fit into necessarily like high academic achieving or, you know, athletes, but it welcomes all kids, and it gives them the opportunity to choose the direction of the focus for that year. Like mental health was this year, for example, and it culminates in events where there's like fundraising for certain causes. But the idea is that it takes the control out of the hands of the teachers and puts it in the hands of the kids to give them that empowerment and that choice. So I don't know if it's something exactly like iCare, which basically is a character ed kind of thing, or if we're, you know, we can obviously, if we do something like that, can bring it into a different type of role that would be more focused on anti-hate and bullying. But something like that is wonderful because then the kids really do navigate it themselves with some adult scaffolding.
Okay, I think we have some good thoughts to make some adjustments moving forward. So the next item on our committee structure is the idea of the steering committee. When we first started, we made the decision as a committee not to have a chair, but to have a steering committee. And so we wanted to get some feedback on, you know, purpose and membership of the steering committee, consider any modifications that might be made. So as it stands right now, we have Dr. Wiles, Dr. Rivera, Matt Pinchnot, myself, and Mirzad as a student representative on the steering committee. When we first created the steering committee, it was Dr. Wiles and Dr. Rivera as ex officio members of the committee, but district liaisons, and then a staff, a parent, and a student as members of the steering committee. And so the purpose of the steering committee as it stands right now is really just to create the agenda and facilitate the meeting. Similar to the way board meetings work, we meet about a week ahead of time. We talk about what happened last time and what might be agenda items for next time, and talk about those standing agenda items. And then a member of the steering committee facilitates the meeting. So we just wanted to take a moment to get some feedback on the format of the steering committee, if you feel like it is helpful for the structure of the larger committee, or if anybody has any general feedback on that. Seema?
Matt's done an awesome job, and I hope that, you know, he plans on staying on the steering committee and leading a lot of the meetings because, yeah, Matt, you're a great leader on this committee, so I hope that you plan on staying in that position.
Yeah, I'd like to second that and just take a second to say, you know, how far we've come in the last couple of years as a district. You know, having this committee, making the decision to look for a DEI coordinator, to make it a full-time position, how to best look for somebody so that we would wind up with somebody who would be really engaged and engaging, and finding Matt and hiring him, and you know Matt has made such a difference to this whole thing in all the many things that he does. And I can say personally, when I've gone to Matt a couple of times to say different things, that I've observed or heard about, he has always addressed the issue and gotten back to me within like a day. One time it was maybe 2 days, and he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry for the delay in my response." And I was like, "Are you kidding?" Wow. So Matt is amazing, energetic, and a powerhouse. So we are really lucky.
Mary?
I have to put my coaching hat on here for a second, but I know girls on my team, and Matt probably knows who they are, on the JV girls basketball team, think the world of him. And just seeing him at some of our games, interacting with the students is phenomenal. They know he is an advocate for them and a safe person to go to. And so I really appreciate that as a coach, knowing that someone is looking out for our kids while they're, at school, and uh, when they're not being an athlete, they know he's there. So thank you. And thank you to the district for doing that.
Okay, any other general feedback on just the function and structure of that committee, the steering piece?
Yeah. I'll just say thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it, and I'm trying to hide my face, but I can't leave the frame. So just thank you. I'm grateful to be here, and I feel very, very fortunate.
All right, Matt, I'm going to let you segue to number 5 about the learning component.
Okay, so here's one of those areas where some of those nice things may start to disappear, because I sent everyone one of, well, actually, Deb sent that, but created one of everyone's favorite things to do, which is another Google form. And it was just feedback about the learning component. And the gist of it was that this year, we went through this book, 5 Practices for Equity Focused Leadership. And this was something that I think we all got a lot out of. When I look at the number of sticky notes and tabs and evidence, like this was definitely a really, really worthwhile book. But we wanted to get the thoughts of committee members. Did you like having a book? So there was kind of that consistent element of it. You knew what was coming, and someone actually put on the form that they, it was nice not having to print something out all the time. Did people like the idea of smaller articles? And then really just if there were specific things that folks wanted, like if there was great books that you've heard of, so that in planning for things going into next year, looking what our learning component is going to look like, because I think that that's probably as much as important as everything that we do. Is I think the learning component is super important, and it's something that we just I'm going to like kind of stand on a little hill right here. We can't afford to lose it, because I think for everything that we do, it is essential that we publicly show that we are all learners too. Because the last thing that any of us need to do is start to either project this image as if we have attained, or that we're infallible, or that we just know everything. And I think it's important for the community to see that it doesn't matter what your job title is, it doesn't matter if you're on a committee or not, that we're all lifelong learners. Now this is a space for us to continue doing that. So that's kind of the gist behind the learning component being so important with what we do. And so if you haven't had a chance to fill out that form yet, please do. It's going to be really, really helpful. It's linked in the agenda. And right now we've got a pretty high number of responses. We've got 6 people who've done it so far, but we're hoping as many of you that can, that would just be phenomenal. And if anyone has thoughts that they would like to share now, we can definitely do that too. The form is just going to be helpful for stuff looking into summer planning. Yeah, Elizabeth, go ahead.
I wonder if we would benefit from doing a book that's more of kind of like a training about DEI. So, you know, a book like, you know, like the kind of books that I know Mike Laster has said they've, you know, the teachers have read together at Farnsworth. You know, like Mike, what were some of the books you said that you guys had read? Was it Blind Spot or like kind of books about implicit bias?
Blind
That
Spot, yeah, Blind Spot was a good book study. I still have extra copies of that if we wanted to do that again. Well, I mean, the last time we did a good district-wide book study, I think, was Stamped, right, with Dr. Singleton, you know, rest his soul. So whether or not that's an option for this group, you know, I think that's something we should, you know, could consider offering that to district-wide staff. Who knows? I don't know what text we would use. You're right, Elizabeth. We've done Blind Spot here, but there's lots of other ones that are out there right now too.
no, I meant for our committee to do.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
That's
yeah,
why something even more basic than what we did this year.
yeah,
Just basic book, you know, we could all do together.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I can say that definitely is a possibility. So if there are books that folks have that they've heard a lot about, I mean, I do really like reading anyways, but like some titles and definitely with my extended network, I've heard some stuff too. I know other people have mentioned, there are a few people on the forum who said, I've heard about this and maybe that's something that we check out. So please, if you have those recommendations, feel free to put them out. Obviously, we're not going to do 10 different books over the course of the year, but it still will be helpful to have a list of things that we can pull from. Did anyone else have any thoughts about that they wanted to share at this time? Okay. If not, please do the forum. I promise it's not long. It's just 3 questions. What are your thoughts on us using the book as opposed to smaller articles? What are some topics you would like to learn more about next year? And then if you have a recommendation, please share it. So it won't take much of your time, but it's definitely going to be very, very helpful. And it kind of connects to that idea of what Amy was bringing us through about the steering committee and us making decisions kind of as a group to find that consensus and how we want to approach things.
Thanks, Matt. All right, we're on to our last agenda item, which is recognition and appreciation for our outgoing members. So we would really like to recognize those who are stepping down from their membership on the committee, allowing new members that we welcomed here earlier to serve. Your time and attention to this work for the benefit of the entire district is sincerely appreciated. So at this time, I'd like to recognize Dee Johnson, Nora Eversman, Nora Whiteside, Sandra Savage, Leah Three, Nicole Aldi, Joe Otter, Andrew Genovese, and Barbara Federico. So if you join me in sharing some appreciation for them.
I'm really sorry to see all you guys go.
You will be forever remembered as part of the inaugural DEI Committee in Guilderland. So thank you all very much for your time, attention, service, learning with us together as a group. Thank you. Matt?
So just because I'm myself, I have to say something. And just to everyone who's leaving, the time that you put in, similar to what I mentioned with the students, it's not unseen, it's not unheard. And it really means a lot. The work doesn't happen without each of you. And I'm so grateful that every individual here, just the grace and the step that you took into the dark. Because when this was formed, there wasn't really an idea of what that might look like. And to really put yourself out there, that was an incredibly brave thing to do. And it was something that was a bold move, and it speaks to your dedication to this work. So I just want to emphasize for anyone watching, it is not at all a matter of DEI is not something that is still important to all these folks. This is something that this is who they are. This is how they live their lives. And so we're grateful to be able to have, been chips that passed at this time. So just thank you again. And we're definitely looking forward to all the new and continued folks who have been inspired by the things that you've done.
All right, thank you, Matt. Dr. Rouse?
I just want to add to all of that, just how much the district appreciates going out on a limb. And our early months of this work were bumpy at best. But all of you stuck with it, and I think we're in a really good position as a district, as learners, and as people committed to this work. And I just want to remind everyone who's leaving the main committee that we have plenty of spots on our subcommittees. So you are welcome to continue to serve in those less formal capacities, but just as important, because that's where the work gets done. So really, my heartfelt thanks for being willing to start this journey with all of us. It's really awesome.
Thank you, everybody. So without further ado, if there's nothing more, I can get a motion to adjourn for this evening. Joe, and a second from Chris. All in favor? Thank you very much. So the meeting is adjourned, and I hope everybody has a wonderful evening.